Something came from Baltimore. Something came from Baltimore.
Welcome to Something Came from Baltimore. Something Came from Baltimore is a jazz, blues, and R&B podcast and show, and it's not really about Baltimore. Today, via Zoom, we have the trumpet player and composer, Adam O'Farrell. Adam is the son of one of my favorite guests of the pod and show, Arturo O'Farrell, and the grandson of the Latin jazz legend, Chico O'Farrell. His brother is also a star. His name is Zach O'Farrell, who also plays drums on the current recording of Visions of Your Others, which was released to the public on November 12th, 2021. And it's kind of like an EP. It's clocking in at 39 minutes with 6 tracks. Even though it was released later in the year, it caught the attention of the New York Times, ranking it number 5 in the best jazz recordings of 2021. In this interview, we're going to deep dive into the album, Visions of Your Other. We'll discuss Adam's cinematic viewpoint, and I suggest he be a character actor in TV and movies. Before we get into this interview, let's listen to a track from the album. It's called Blackening Skies. Who's playing?
That's my dad. He's playing some Elton John, I think. Probably it's his go-to song for when he's joking around with somebody. I hope it's not distracting.
I'm just trying to figure out what it is now. I wonder if I can hear
it. You're not missing too much. He's just going through an Elton John song.
I love your dad. I've interviewed him twice already for the show.
Nice.
Yeah, he's such a cool dude.
He is a cool dude. Yeah, I can say that.
We were talking about cinema.
Yeah.
Are you in acting? Are you gonna be an actor and or model?
Oh man. I've thought about, my friend and I made some like little experimental. We just like kind of, I think 2 summers ago, just kind of took some videos, like around where I used to live in Ditmas Flatbush area, and then also in Brighton Beach. We kind of shot some videos, just me, like, walking around, kind of very, very, kind of moody, black and white, but nothing,
exactly.
Nothing too concrete,
That's what I'm getting at. You're hooked on the black and white. Like your press stuff, your videos are recorded like in black and white. But what's good about it changes your whole, like, you have like a supporting actor look to you. Like, you look a lot like older, but you look like you could be like in 50 million movies, and then be like, oh, that's that guy. And I was like,
yeah.
I bet you any money you found that black and white works for you. It gives you kind of a cool look, but it actually really works for you.
Oh, that's really interesting. I mean, I think black and white's cool. What's really cool about black and white is that, it kind of, I think it sort of makes it, I don't know. I think when you have color, it's much easier to kind of like recognize the emotional leaning of something, whereas black and white, there's something a bit more objective to it. At least, I'm not a film theorist or anything, but, I just feel like what's interesting is that you have, like Charlie Chaplin, and then you have Ingmar Bergman, and they're both, working in black and white, and so it's easy to kind of look at like, oh, this is a black and white movie. I think the way they're using the contrast and shadow and how they're shooting, obviously it's different eras too, but
sure, they went to school for that. Shading is a character in itself,
Yeah, exactly. And black and white really kind of, I think, amplifies sort of the necessity to sort of be discerning with how you light things. where color, color is great too because you can really rely on like, what color of a dress this character is wearing to kind of like influence the way you're supposed to feel about that character.
You're listening to Something Came from Baltimore. I am your host, Tom Gouker. Today we are chatting with Adam O'Farrell with the super praised recording Visions of Your Other. Something Came from Baltimore is a show on thebox.com. And you have to check out the show notes, Patreon, and the artist bio info. They're all in the show notes. Now let's get back into okay, so you have this album. It's called Vision of Your Other. It was number 5 on the New York Times best jazz albums of this year. Did you read the review?
Yeah, I think I did. No, I saw it.
Do you feel that they gave you enough advice that you could maybe improve it and be number 4 or 3?
I hadn't thought that far ahead yet.
You could do a Kanye where it's a work in progress. But how cool is that? Like, this album came out in November, early November, and it was hot enough for them to put it on their top 5.
Yeah,
it's really impressive.
Thank you. No, I'm really grateful. To the musician, to the band, to the label, and the people working behind the scenes to make, to bring it wider attention. So, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it must feel good. Downbeat has said really, really nice things about you.
Yeah.
Is that add some pressure to you, or?
Yeah, a little bit. If I'm going to be honest, I think, I think there are a lot of people who are, the beneficiaries and receive a lot of attention and I don't know. I mean, I think it's tough, because you want to like feel like, you want to like kind of shut off that part of your brain on one hand, of like, okay, it's just a review, it's just a list, it's like I that's not why I'm doing it, but it's also like it does feel good, and so it's like, okay, it feels good to be recognized, and I guess it's a weird kind of pressure. It's less a thing of like wanting to live up to it, and more just like wanting to kind of keep pushing myself. But I think that that was kind of already there before this album got some of the attention that it's received. Yeah. But I think our generation, I'm really proud to be part of the generation that I'm proud of, because it's I think we all just kind of like, we all just want to keep pushing, for the most part, and we don't really, we all want to keep it personal and fresh, and know that we're challenging ourselves and trusting our listeners to, join us.
And musically, nothing's off the table. Like all genres, the ability, improvisation, everything is real. Before I get into the album, are you a vegan? Is that what's going on? Is this what I'm hearing?
No, I'm not. I was a vegetarian for about 5 months.
Harder than you think.
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't that hard. I mean, it was hard, but it wasn't as hard as I expected it. What happened was that I was on tour with Mary in Europe this past fall, and we were in a little town in the Alps of Austria, like the Austrian Alps, and we had lunch, and I had this bread dumpling thing. They call it Tyrolean dumplings. It's a vegetarian thing on the menu for lunch, and then we went to this place for dinner. And the only vegetarian option they had for dinner were these dumplings, and I was just like, I'm in a part of the world I don't really get to go to very often. I should just enjoy myself, And so I got salmon, But then, from that point on, I was a mile away from the wagon,
Yeah.
and like we got to Barcelona and all hell broke loose, So, but I'd like to, give it another shot at some point.
So the first song on the album is a meditation of Richie Sakamoto's A Chromatic Fantasy Fragment, but I could not find the pronunciation of this word online. I really like the prolonged synth note at the beginning.
Yeah.
It just runs for like it feels like it's almost a minute.
Yeah.
And it's random. And then it goes in really low in the mix. There's another line that runs through. And I'm very tuned into that.
So actually, that's not a synth. It's two horns. So pretty much So the guy who co-produced the album with me, Curtis McDonald, I was taking some lessons with him and just like kind of composition, production, different things, and he introduced me to this program called Paul Stretch. And Paul Stretch is a time stretching software that a lot of film composers in the 80s and 90s used, I think, and maybe early 2000s as well. And pretty much what I did was I took a 10-second little segment of the band playing that you hear, like on the track. I took 10 seconds of just Xavier and I, the two horns, holding this note, and I just stretched that to like a minute. So I put that at the beginning. And there's also something that you hear Ryuichi Sakamoto, like that time stretching, idea is something you hear in some of his, I think that album, and also like some of his other more recent like electronic work, In
this song, more than there's such a conversation between the two horns. Like I don't think the others have as much back and forth conversation. It feels like conversation. The whole album feels to me like a conversation.
Yeah, well, that's yeah. I mean, that's the thing with I think that's something that I was definitely trying to channel with the master, and even going back to the first album. I think the first album that we did was recorded not too long after I saw that movie, and I think Zach even references it in the liner notes that he wrote for that album. And the conversational thing, but also conversation sort of interrupted by sort of a more lucid, looming tone, like there's conversation like Goodfellas. This is conversation that's really kind of seen as an element that grounds the whole picture,
Yeah, no, I do understand that. That makes sense. Now, The Blackened Sky, it's about climate change and the anxiety of climate change. Well, boy, if we couldn't get anxiety I said, who thought when you were a child that you'd be wearing a mask around Christmas time, and
that's
it'd be like
forward to back, right?
and it'd be 75 degrees outside.
Yeah,
like,
right.
That's not Christmas.
Yeah,
and it's like this is the new world, and if that's not anxiety, I can't tell you what is.
I was just watching the news. Speaking of PBS, I was just watching the news, like local news, and there was this story of a puppy getting rescued from an avalanche. And when I saw the puppy, I thought he was dead, and I was like, I could feel my heart, race. and I was just thinking, like, I wonder if that many people had that response to climate change, and the fact that it's kind of seen as a more existential threat, I think is a very apt way of putting it. It is existential, but it's also existential because it's kind of lurking and lurking and lurking, and now it's becoming a little bit more violently in front of our faces. It's weird because it's like it's something that is kind of happening. We now we're seeing it happen, really.
So the Blackened Sky, to me, there's a dialogue, there's a conversation, and within that piece, it's almost like two pieces. Then it gets into a whole different level. So, I'm gonna have to play a segment for our people. So, can you explain kind of what it is, and maybe we'll play a cut.
Yeah, I don't know. There is dialogue. I also kind of there's a deliberate sort of machination to the piece. I kind of was...
You're building anxiety, too. I feel
yeah, and I started writing the piece pretty much after kind of two incidents of sort of climate-induced anxiety. One was I was playing a gig, I think Randall's Island, which is like an island off the city, pretty much, but still in the city technically. And it was this big festival, with this kind of, sort of bigger artist, and it was so hot that like barely anybody showed up, and it was just really depressing,
Yeah.
and it's like, it was like, oh my God, that's possible for like even this festival, even this artist, to play a gig with them, that there could be a show that's so poorly attended because of the heat, and it was just this horrible heat wave. And then the cherry on top was that it was a completely hellish journey back home. Like, we had to wait, I think almost an hour for a bus back to the city. And then when we got back to the city, the trains, like barely any of the trains were running, and the ones that were running had no air conditioning. And so, like, I was just like, walking past, and the streets were crowded. It was like, it let us off in Harlem, and Harlem is just crowded, and it just felt so manic, and just like that the city was like falling apart under the weight of this mania, like literally with the trains, and then a couple days later, I went out to LA to see some family, and for the first time ever in my experiences going to LA, it was raining, which I just like, it was a summer monsoon, and I just like, wow, what the hell is going on, between like these two things. And so I was kind of approaching the piece from a place of dread, and kind of wanted to have this dreadful, almost pseudo-baroque kind of melodic, haunting sound, and then the mechanical, it's a very mechanical piece, and I think, that's just sort of to like really convey the sense that we're almost trapped in this situation, and the powers that be are so huge, and that it's like, what is it going to take,
My favorite song on this album is Inner War.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's my win, as a reflection of inner turmoil.
By this point in the conversation, there's a lot of inner turmoil.
Can you give a little on Inner War?
Yeah, I wrote Inner War started writing it when I was working on a farm in Maine, uh, 4 summers ago, 4.5 summers ago. And what happened was that we took chickens to be slaughtered, and it was a very conflicting moment, just because I'd never, kind of, I didn't see it happen, but we like, I helped the farmer whose farm it was. I helped him load the chickens into the van, and like, in the moment that they were being loaded into the van, you knew that they were, you know, they knew that like it was their time.
Thumbs up. Yeah.
And so I was just conflicted because I mean, chicken is also one of my favorite foods, and it was yeah, I was just very, very conflicted about that. I was also just conflicted because I grew up a city kid, and I was here on this farm, and I was just so moved by being there and being in different surroundings and seeing the sky up so close, and breathing this kind of air, and still I went back to the farm, earlier this year, and it's still, to this day, it's just like it's a very complicated thing for me, because I'm a very proud New Yorker, and I love New York, and I'm very grateful to have grown up here, and I do feel a certain pride in just in the way I, walk here and know the streets, but I think it's kind of, objectively kind of not, speaking of climate and environment, I think it's objectively a worse way to live than living in a farm, and kind of taking a more humble, modest approach to life, and relying on the resources that you cultivate for yourself. It's such a powerful lesson to learn, So the piece, I started writing it when I was there, I think just kind of as a sort of, all these kind of thoughts, conflicting thoughts swirling around, Great, it was great. Thank you I really appreciate you taking an interest in the album, and I'm really glad you like it.
Oh yeah, it's really cool that it happened so fast. Like, dang, it's like it's still a fresh album for you. You're still trying to play it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool that you could throw that tag along with it.
Well, it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of nice to like put out an album, because once you put it out, it's out there, and like somebody might hear it the week it comes out, or somebody might discover it like 4 years from now, and I think either way, it's like, I don't know. I think it's very easy to obsess over like the release period and like getting the buzz and all that, and that's all all important stuff, but like it's out there, and people come around to it now, that's great. If they come to it, whenever, that's great. It's definitely confusing, but I definitely try and remind myself, like I'm, very lucky to have an album out there, and to have like had the opportunity to record it and to even think about recording it. I think it's like, such a gift to have like some drive, to create is really, it sustains us,
Definitely. And that sounds like your dad.
I was thinking when I was saying that, I was like, oh wait, I'm tapping into that.
But hey, that's awesome. You are too. So thank you very much for the time. I hope you enjoyed our interview today on Something Came from Baltimore. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with 5 people who love music just as much as you do, because we want you all to be a part of that Be More Music scene. The show is over. Have a beautiful day.
Something came from Baltimore.